Okay, so let's talk about something that I genuinely think people are not fully appreciating right now. Because when you look at what James Gunn and the new DC studios are building, and I mean, really look at it, one film keeps coming up as the one that could change everything. Not just for Supergirl as a character, not just for the story they're trying to tell, but for what the entire DC universe could eventually become on a cosmic scale. I'm talking about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And if you haven't been paying close attention, I need you to sit with me on this one, because this film is doing something that DC has never quite pulled off before. It's going interstellar. It's going deep into the emotional core of one of the most misunderstood characters in DC history. And it might just be setting the foundation for a universe that stretches far beyond anything we've seen from either DC or Marvel in live action. Let's start with the obvious question. Why Supergirl? Why now? And why does this specific story matter so much? Here's the thing. For decades, Kara Zor-El has lived in the shadow of her cousin. Superman is hope, strength, light. He landed on Earth as a baby, grew up in Smallville, became Clark Kent before he ever became the Man of Steel. His story is about discovering purpose in a world that adopted him. But Kara? Kara's story is something completely different. She remembers Krypton. She watched it die. She was old enough to feel that loss in real time, to carry it with her across the cosmos, and then arrive on a planet that had already moved on, a planet where her cousin had grown up, made a life, and become a legend while she was still just trying to survive. What's really interesting here is that this creates a fundamentally different kind of hero. Superman became who he is because of Earth. Kara became who she is despite everything. There's a quiet, simmering grief underneath her story that has never really been explored the way it deserves to be. Not in live action, at least. And that's exactly what makes Woman of Tomorrow such a significant choice as a launch pad for the new DCU. The film is based on Tom King's comic run of the same name. And if you've read those comics, you already know this isn't a typical superhero story. It's raw. It's intimate. It's almost a road movie set across the galaxy. And it centers on a version of Kara who is, frankly, a mess in the most human, relatable, emotionally honest way possible. She's struggling. She's angry. She's carrying the weight of an entire dead civilization inside her chest, and she doesn't always handle that weight gracefully. She makes mistakes. She drinks. She's not particularly warm when you first meet her. And this is where things get deeper, because what director Craig Gillespie is doing with this character, based on everything we know about his approach, is refusing to smooth out those rough edges. This is the director who gave us Tanya, a film that took a controversial, complicated real woman and forced you to sit with her contradictions rather than resolve them neatly. That same instinct is exactly what Kara Zor-El needs. She doesn't need to be likable from minute one. She needs to be real. Think about what that means for the wider DC universe. James Gunn has been very deliberate in talking about this being a story-driven universe, not just a franchise engine. And if you look at the choices being made, starting with a Superman who leads with heart, and then immediately following with a Supergirl who leads with pain, there's a clear statement being made about what kind of heroes this universe is interested in telling stories about. These aren't polished, perfect paragons. These are broken people trying to be good anyway. Now, let's talk about the cosmic stuff, because this is where I think the long-term significance of this film gets genuinely exciting. Woman of Tomorrow doesn't just take place on Earth. The story moves through alien worlds, strange civilizations, and corners of the galaxy that live-action DC has barely scratched the surface of. And if you think about it from a world-building perspective, this is enormous. Marvel spent years establishing the cosmic side of their universe. Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor's Asgard, the Kree, and the Skrulls, and it paid off enormously. It gave them a playground that extended beyond any single planet or hero. DC has always had that same cosmic richness in the comics. The Green Lantern Corps, New Genesis and Apocalypse, alien empires, ancient gods. But in live action, it's never been developed with any real consistency or commitment. What Supergirl could do is crack that door open in a way that feels earned, because it's built into the character's story rather than grafted on as spectacle. Every alien world Kara passes through, every civilization she encounters, isn't just set dressing. It's a piece of a universe clicking into place. A planet that appears in this film could come back in a Green Lantern story. A species introduced here could matter in a later conflict. If the DCU handles this with even a fraction of the intentionality that Gunn has been promising, the cosmic side of this film could be the seed that grows into something massive. And then there's Lobo. Okay, I have to take a second here because Lobo is genuinely one of the most fascinating comic book characters DC has ever created, and the fact that he's appearing in this film tells you a lot about the tone they're going for. Lobo is an alien bounty hunter who is, to put it gently, completely unhinged. He's violent, he's loud, he's darkly comedic, and he exists in a space between antihero and outright villain that nobody else in the DC roster quite occupies. He's like if you took the most chaotic energy you can imagine, gave it a motorcycle and chain, and sent it into space. What's really interesting about pairing Lobo with Kara in this story is the contrast. She's grief and weight and moral complexity. He's chaos and freedom and zero consequences. They push against each other in ways that are going to generate real sparks, both dramatically and comedically. And that balance of humor and emotional depth is something the best superhero films have always understood. You can't sustain pure intensity for 2 hours. You need moments that let the audience breathe, and Lobo is clearly going to be doing a lot of that heavy lifting. But here's something I keep coming back to in terms of the emotional core of this film, and it's something I don't think gets talked about enough. Krypto, the superdog. I know. Just hear me out. Because in the context of this particular story, Krypto isn't just a fun Easter egg or a crowd-pleasing sidekick. He's a direct emotional link between Kara and Kal-El. He's a piece of home, a living, breathing reminder of the family she lost, and the cousin she's still figuring out how to relate to. In Tom King's comics, there are moments involving Krypto that are genuinely heartbreaking in the most unexpected way. And if the film leans into that, if they treat Krypto with the same emotional honesty they're bringing to Kara, then this dog is going to do things to people that they are absolutely not prepared for. That's the thing about this film that I think is going to surprise people the most. On the surface, you see Supergirl movie, and some part of your brain files it under fun superhero adventure. And sure, it probably is that. But underneath it, there's a story about grief, about identity, about what it means to survive something that was supposed to kill you, and whether survival alone is enough to call yourself a hero. That's not light material. That's the kind of stuff that stays with you. If you think about the landscape of DC films we've had, even the ones that worked, very few of them have been willing to sit inside that level of emotional complexity with a female lead at the center. Wonder Woman came close in moments, but it was ultimately a more classical hero's journey. What Woman of Tomorrow seems to be doing is something closer to a character deconstruction. It's asking what heroism looks like when the hero herself isn't sure she deserves the title. And here's where I want to go slightly into theory territory, because this is the part that genuinely excites me as a DC fan. If Kara's arc in this film is about learning to be a hero on her own terms, separate from Superman's legacy, separate from the weight of Krypton, then where does that arc lead? Because if she comes out the other side of this story as a fully realized, autonomous hero in her own right, she becomes one of the most powerful players in the new DCU. Not just physically, but narratively. She could be the anchor for the cosmic side of this universe in the same way that Superman anchors the Earth-based stories. She's already operated across multiple worlds in this film. She has relationships with alien civilizations. She understands the universe beyond Earth in a way that almost no other DC hero in live action currently does. If James Gunn is really thinking several steps ahead, and everything suggests that he is, then Kara coming out of this film as a proven, complex, cosmic-level hero sets up an extraordinary amount of storytelling potential. Think about what a character like Kara could mean for a future Justice League story that actually goes cosmic, or a conflict involving the Green Lantern Corps, or whatever version of the new gods they're eventually building toward. She's already been out there. She already knows what's coming from the stars. That's not a small thing. What makes all of this work, though, what makes any of this land, is whether the film actually commits to Kara as a person first and a superhero second. And based on everything we know about the creative team, the source material, and James Gunn's stated vision for this universe, I genuinely believe they're going to get that right. This isn't a film being made to check a box or fill a release slot. This is a film being made because someone looked at Kara Zor-El and saw a story worth telling, a story about loss and survival and what you build when everything you came from is gone. That's why this film matters. Not just as a superhero movie, not just as another piece of the DCU puzzle, but as a story about a character who has never truly gotten her moment, and who, if they do this right, is going to earn her place as one of the defining heroes of this entire generation of DC storytelling. The universe is about to get a whole lot bigger, and Kara Zor-El is going to be the one leading us into it. I'll see you in the next one.